Hi there. Welcome to ScioSophia, which I imagine you're wondering, what the hell does that mean? More on that in a minute. You might be wondering a bit, though, who the heck I am, particularly for those of you who've never met me before with all this, and why am I on this YouTube channel that I've named ScioSophia, this strange name that it is, and why am I not pronouncing it ScioSophia and all that jazz. Again, more on that in a minute. My name is Adrian, actually. I'm a climate scientist. Work at a major university, and all that good stuff. Do a lot of research myself on the climate and climate modeling and where they do well and where they do not. I'm also politically conservative. I'm also a stained glass crafter, an aunt, a sister, a daughter, among many other things. All of those things together, not in any particular order. Also Catholic, but again, no particular order, just little bits of things about who I am. And, you know, it's going to be fun. This is a new project for me to do this particular channel that I am doing entirely of my own volition. Actually, there's no other support for there's no support for this channel. There's no particular thing going on here. This is entirely my project. No support from others, no endorsement from others. Just me here and thinking, talking my ideas. And that leads me, you know, why did I create this channel on YouTube, this brand new channel, ScioSophia? In the time that we find ourselves in now in the US, where we have a lot of animosity, a lot of things going wrong, a lot of distrust of science, we can be honest about that, though scientists are technically some of the most trusted people in the country. Right now, with all of that, one of the things that we need more of, not less of, is we need more voices talking, not less, to help bring that conversation, but also to help bridge the gap and build some empathy here between groups of people. I tend to sit myself in the middle of a lot of different things, being both a climate scientist and a conservative. You might be able to imagine that for me, I sometimes I get it from both ends, though. I've written about this before, that I've gotten more, shall we say, animosity or harassment for being conservative than I ever have for being a climate scientist. And that may change. Who knows? I'm still technically young and early in my career, being only 4 years out of getting my PhD. That said, you notice I didn't mention my PhD up front. And this is because this channel is also a little bit from me as a person, providing content and thoughts connected with what I know about science and other things. That's what this channel is going to be directed about, is talking on science topics and just putting out ideas there that, I don't know, maybe you've never heard, because for me and my weird perspective or some things like that, I joke with some folks who know me, and it's just like I'm a walking contradiction. Most people, because of how politicized my field is, don't think of conservatives as being climate scientists at all, but yeah, I am. And it makes for some fun things, and sometimes it's interesting being stuck in the middle. So yeah, I think more voices are needed here, and you know, I'm going to talk science as I choose on this channel. I'm going to bring up some thoughts, some ideas, bring up some data and information, talk on papers, talk on articles, talk on things going on in the scientific world that maybe the rest of the public doesn't know about, but maybe should. And also, you know, bring up some of my own opinions on things. And part of the reason I'm going to bring up some of those opinions is I wrote publicly 4 years ago about what it was like being in my field and being in academia as a conservative. And at the time, it was not very friendly at that time. And when I've been looking back on it, thinking more, it's still not all that friendly to be in academia as a conservative. So for those of you out there who are students in college or conservative, or faculty or staff that are conservative working at a major university, I get it. Really, I do. If you've been feeling that way, I've been feeling that way too. Again, my experience is anecdotal. I'm not going to go off of anecdotal and say that that's the norm. But my experience has been anecdotal and not feeling entirely at home in academia for much of my career because of the issues surrounding the culture and not necessarily wanting to hear from a divergent point of view. And study after study has actually shown that there is very few conservatives, at least in the humanities fields. I've noticed they've not done that study with the physical sciences fields at all, which is really interesting, and perhaps a topic I can get into later on in this channel. But yeah, so the other thing is I wanted to actually make sure this could be totally informal. You might guess I am wearing a tattered pair of jeans, a sweater, and all sorts of things like that, because I'll be perfectly honest. When I go to work, which you will never hear me mention, I'm not going to mention the institution that I work for, because again, the primary thing is that this is my project. Nobody else is endorsing it. I'm the one doing this. This is going to be entirely my opinion and thoughts on an issue. So I'm not going to drag in the institution that I work for, or institutions I have worked for in the past, because I just want to talk science on this channel. That's all I really want to do, is talk about science and things going on in science, and leave it be really informal. Because, I mean, technically for some people, I am an expert. But I'd rather you know me as a person, not just as an expert. And that's a topic I'm going to get into in another video too. Maybe the next one I do, actually. I haven't quite decided yet what order I'm going to go in. So that's a lot of the reasons I wanted to do this, is to give a voice, because I know, and I have met in the last less than 6 months, I've actually met a lot of scientists through connections that I have, and folks that work at universities who are feeling very much the same way that I am, that sometimes in academia, or very oftentimes in academia, and more so in the last couple of years, you can't speak your mind. You feel like you have to self-censor. And that's not right. Frankly, it's not right. We should be speaking as vocally as any other. So I'm going to offer this channel up as a place to talk science and talk on it from my perspective. And I hope this will eventually be really informal discussions and conversation where we can really have a good time just chatting about science and about the issues connected with science and the role of science in society and any number of different things. I'll get to topics in a second that I'm going to focus on this channel, at least at the start. But why the name ScioSophia? And yes, that is the proper pronunciation, not ScioSophia. ScioSophia is the proper pronunciation here. And you're going to have to pardon me, because for whatever reason I can't get to the taskbar. There we go. ScioSophia. So one thing most folks don't know about me personally is actually one of the things I'm really a fan of when I get to my free time is looking into etymology, which is the root origins of words. And I'm also a big fan of philosophy too. I've been enjoying a lot lately, in particular, reading into different philosophies of personalism and identitarianism and stoicism and a few other things. And of course, the roots of Western philosophy, and doing some digging also into indigenous knowledge and things like that. So it's things I'm doing on the side. But they will come into this channel because I enjoy philosophy very much also. So where the name ScioSophia comes from is I actually took the roots of two of my favorite words and went into and stuck them together. So science as a word, because I am a scientist for a living, science for a word takes its origins going back to mid-14th century. So it means what is known, what is a knowledge acquired by study, information, assurance of knowledge, certitude, and certainty, which seeing this now, just made me think of a topic for another video because of what I study is uncertainty, actually. So this is something we can talk about. I study uncertainty in climate models, so that's interesting. Anyway, let me get in there, and you can tell, like, I'm already informal. This is just me chatting, running my mouth right now. But I'm going to be very informal with this. And I invite you to be very informal. And the only rules that I have is, if you get vulgar, if you start harassing me, any number of other different things like that, I'm sorry, you will get blocked. Tough luck. I don't put up with it. But I will gladly engage you in a conversation if you are polite and civil with me. Let's see here. But the root word of science goes all the way back to the Latin. So science is an old French word, knowledge, learning, application. Then comes back to the Latin scientia, or scientia, I believe is the proper pronunciation there, which is also knowledge, a knowing, expertness. Sciens is, again, the other Latin word. Scire is the verb to know. Here, to separate one thing from another is also the way it's been used from. And that's actually where I stopped when I did that because scire is one of the root words of science, of the word science, I should say. But the present participle of, I think it's present voice participle of the word scire is scio, which is SIO, which is the beginning of the thing, which just literally means no. Like I know, or you know. It just means no when it's translated from Latin to directly to English itself. So scio is that. But since I also enjoy philosophy, and we'll get into some of the philosophy of science, possibly, as well as where science intersects culture, I wanted to bring in something from the other end with philosophy. So philosophy is a word, 1300s, into, knowledge, body of knowledge. Go to the old French philosophie, which I am probably butchering that wrong because I have no idea how to pronounce French most of the time. Philosophia in the Latin again, but also it goes back a bit further even to the Greek. Philosophia in the Greek, when it's translated exactly, means love of knowledge, pursuit of wisdom, systematic investigation. And then it breaks down into two separate words. The Greek philo meaning loving or to love or love of something. And then Sophia, which also means knowledge, but my preferred phrasing here is actually the word wisdom. And that's actually for me because there's a interesting philosophical debate. And again, this is something I may get into just chatting on this channel and getting your thoughts on it. And I really hope to get you thinking, actually, with this talk, because probably my beef with education right now is that I'm worried that students are being taught what to think and not how to think. I would prefer, if you're going to go into sciences in particular, that you are taught how to think, not what to think, and particularly how to think critically. So Sophia meaning wisdom. So if you put the two words together, ScioSophia, or ScioSophia, I should say, I butchered my own pronunciation, ScioSophia, you get the exact translation in English is no wisdom. And knowledge and wisdom are two intertwined things, and there's a great little philosophical debate on what's more important, knowledge or wisdom. And can you have wisdom without knowledge, or can you have knowledge without having wisdom? They're two very intertwined ideas and concepts, and going to biblical wisdom, if you follow that, or even just the root word of different wisdom in different philosophies. It's really, really fascinating, actually. So that's something I hope to get into, but that's where the name came from for this channel, because I really enjoy looking at the roots of words. I enjoy science immensely, of course. I enjoy philosophy so much. So let's just smash them all together and make it just a fun name out of it and make yourself a branding thing. Of course, I haven't come up with anything yet for, what is going to be the picture for the channel or the profile or any number of the different photos on the channel just for branding yet, but that's plenty fine. We're just getting started, and I hope this is the first of many. So, ScioSophia, no wisdom. And I hope to help you know some wisdom, or maybe just to know knowledge. Add more knowledge to your thing, know knowledge. That's an interesting phraseology. You're going to find that I'm a little bit weird when I talk, trust me, because I get to be perfectly informal in these kinds of setups. Here is the tact that I want to take with ScioSophia. This is going to be a science channel. This is going to be about talking on science and on science topics. And that's going to be anything from the purely philosophical kind of things. Like I've got it on my mind to do a little video on my thoughts on what is an expert. How do you define an expert in something? And part of me got over that because I was looking over some old docs from when I did my PhD prelim exams in 2014. God, 7 years ago. I feel really old now. And one of the questions had to do with that sort of topic is, how do you define an expert? So get into things like that. Get into some science research. Talk on some questions related with science research. Science as a profession. What people may or may not know about it, and talking about the ins and outs of that and kinds of things that I think might be done better or currently could be done differently. But I'm also going to get into some science and culture and science and politics, because there's been arguments of, you can't really disentangle science from politics anymore, or things like that. And I'm not so sure I agree with that necessarily. I'm still thinking on that one, but definitely some science and culture issues because they are crossing paths, particularly at this point in history in the U.S. How I'm going to do it with the channel, at least to start, is I'm going to ask a question at the open of each video. Then I'm going to pose the answer. And you're going to see some of my thoughts on why, because I'm going to have news articles and essays that I might have read, peer-reviewed literature, data, anything that I can dig up that supports that's going to connect with my thoughts on an issue, or maybe give you something that you haven't thought about. And all of that info, and yeah, a bit of my opinion on it as a person, as a scientist, as just a general amateur philosopher myself, and talk on all of those kinds of things. And I hope for you who are watching this, and you may be in my political ballpark, or you're more liberal, classical liberal, or progressive, or whatever, that we can have a good conversation about it. Throw it out there and we'll see what happens. I really hope to promote some good conversations, because right now the lack of different people wanting to talk to each other, depending upon where they are, is really evident. So hopefully we'll get into some fun conversations over science, particularly for those of us who are scientists, or if you're just a geek who's interested in science, or you'd like to access and talk to somebody or get videos from somebody who is a scientist who's going to be very informal about it. Like I said, I hate being in dress slacks and a nice blouse all day when I go to work normally. You will always see me in a tattered t-shirt, probably with my hair back in a ponytail, and, who knows, you may see me in pajamas one day. It's just going to be very, very informal. I am not going to go with this in an absolutely professional manner. This is going to be a very informal, conversational kind of thing. In here, in terms of the number of videos, I think, because there's a lot of things going on, of course, in my life, and I am doing this in my free time, outside of work, and completely outside of work, and also doing a lot of other things going on with my family, probably will go with, except for this month, probably will go with about once a month to get things started, to see new videos here. And, after that, we'll see. I may, if I get into a rhythm, I may end up putting things out twice a month or more, or once a week or something like that, just to make sure that I get new content up here and think about things that are interesting. And of course, if you have something you want to see, comment and let me know. I'd appreciate it. Science you want to talk about. Excuse me. And like I said, format-wise, they're going to be pretty raw. It's going to be pretty unfiltered. I'm going to try and have data and things to support what I think. Sometimes it's not there, to be honest, and it's just going to be my opinion on why I think this might not be right, and maybe some additional studies that should be done. That's also a possibility. Why didn't somebody study this? Why shouldn't somebody study that? Did they? Didn't they? And I'm going to invite you, if I say something that is, that you don't think is right, throw me a source. Show me, tell me what you think. And I very much appreciate it. And with that in mind, I'm going to be very thrilled with this particular channel, hopefully, and get into a lot of good stuff. Raw and unfiltered conversations about science, so we can all hopefully know wisdom. ScioSophia. How to connect with me is the next thing I want to cover in this video. One thing I want to say is that if you want to connect with me directly, yes, you can comment on YouTube. I'm not going to be patrolling those as much. That's going to be very minimal. That's more for sort of general public consumption of these videos. If you want to comment and make a note and see what would be of interest to you. Where I suggest you actually go if you want to find me and conversate on some of these issues on social media and you don't already know me, that's where I'm going to suggest that you go find me on Locals. I'm not going to do much with this on Twitter or Facebook, mostly because I don't view Twitter or Facebook as being places where you can actually have productive conversations. Most of what I have seen is at this point, people end up in their own freaking echo chambers and in their ideological corners, and they don't want to talk. Don't want to actually have a productive conversation about anything. And how can you really when it's only in 200 and some odd characters or multiple tweet threads or things like that? And, the problem with, I had the mic go out for a second. The problem with some of the things with Twitter and Facebook is you can get a lot of trolls. And because I really want this to be about having productive conversations around science and science issues and the intersection of science and culture, that's why I'm going to suggest that you go to Locals, because as a friend of mine says repeatedly, Locals is very much social media for adults. There's a very handy thing. So Locals is a very new, let me see real quick if I can actually, well, we'll just open this up here in a second. Locals is a new social media platform and a very different business model from Facebook and Twitter, I would point out. The reason I like Locals as social media for adults is you can start a free account. Opening an account is free. You can be a member of Locals for free, just the same way as in Twitter and Facebook. But what keeps the trolls out is that if you want to share, to comment, to share, to comment, to interact on posts in Locals, you have to be a paying supporter. And that is a different thing, because most of the time trolls don't want to pay to be a supporter of something. They don't want to pay money to just troll somebody. They just want to do it. Which is one of the reasons I like Locals, is because the trolls are gone. All the people who want to have a productive conversation can have it without fear of having those knuckleheads just coming in and ruining a conversation. Some of the best conversations I've had on science have been on Locals, and I absolutely love it. In the last 6 months in particular, one of the Locals communities I joined, well, actually, it shouldn't make sense. When you get onto Locals, I realized I hadn't explained this part of it. When you get onto Locals, one of the things that you can do is make your own community. You can yourself. I have not, but you can also join communities created by others. So, for example, I'm part of a community that promotes, that was started by an organizational psychologist. And the other thing I would say with Locals, then, you can join whatever communities that you want as a member. But again, if you want to interact with anybody in those communities, you have to be a paying supporter. And that's where I am. I'm actually a paying supporter in a couple of communities. And for this particular video and for this particular channel, a lot of where I'm going to be interacting on the content and kind of things that I put into this channel is in a Locals group called SciWorthy. And I'll flip over to that in a second. But SciWorthy was created by a website of the same name, SciWorthy, which is actually a nonprofit that's part of Blue Marble Space, which is another nonprofit. But the point of SciWorthy is actually nonpartisan science communication. And so they recently started this Locals community to help non-scientists connect with scientists and just be able to ask questions of each other and have a good old time chatting about science. So I became a paying supporter of SciWorthy at Locals, sciworthy.locals.com. I will put the link in the description, because sciworthy.locals.com is a wonderful place to interact on conversations. I will say the other reason you would want to be a member and paying supporter or a paying supporter on sciworthy.locals.com is there's going to be content that I create for YouTube, but there will also be content that I create that you will only find on Locals. And so that's going to be the thing with that, is that there's going to be some things that I'm only going to share with the Locals community, and then there will be other things that end up on this channel. Tough luck. That's going to be the way I'm going to do this. If you don't like that, because there's certain things that I think the Locals community alone will like, and there's certain things that I'll put out there just for the whole world to see on YouTube. And that'll be the end of that particular thing. But yeah, I very much encourage you to join SciWorthy. .locals.com if you want to interact with me and talk on anything that I'm going to be talking about here. One of the things you'll find actually that we're doing that is exclusive to sciworthy.locals.com is we're actually doing so I'm actually tag teaming this with the admin of SciWorthy. Again, I'm not making any money off of sciworthy.locals.com. I am actually a paying member and just helping out with filming some interesting things for the sciworthy.locals.com community entirely on my free time outside of my actual work here. So one of the things like we filmed recently was, we recorded recently was the first of many, we hope, sci-worthy conversations where it was just I and the admin sitting down and chatting on a topic in science. And the first one up was one that was really popular with the sci-worthy community, straight out of the gate, trust in and perception of scientists. It's a big deal. And that ended up being an hour and a half. And as you can see from this thing here, this is part 2. Pardon me if I bumped the microphone. And that made a very interesting conversation we had, because she comes at it from a very different perspective than I do. So we had a blast chatting, and we had a lot of good interactions with people, and we're looking forward to filming our next sci-worthy conversation. But if you want to see that, that's exclusive to locals. You can't see it on YouTube. Sorry. So you may just have to go join Sci-worthy if you really want to go see that. So I think that's it for me. Welcome, as I said, to ScioSophia, where we talk science, where we just informally just run our mouths on science and science topics and things going on that you may not know about, and get into some philosophical nerdy stuff, and to get into some of the fun stuff going on, science and culture, any number of different things. Nothing is off the table so long as it's connected to science. That's all that I want with this channel, in particular. So I think that's it. I'm going to drop the next video here soon, actually, because I don't want to leave you all between, waiting a month between the introduction and when there's actually new content that comes up. So I think I'm going to do a video, another video here very soon that I think is going to be my thoughts on the question of what is an expert? How do you define an expert? So that's it for now, I think. This is Adrian signing off. Till next time, stay curious, my friends.